The pavement radiated heat under the noon sun, turning the bus stop into a shimmering island of concrete. Lola shifted her weight, her knuckles white as she tightened her grip on her backpack strap. Molly stood inches away, eyes fixed on the digital sign that flickered with erratic, ghostly light. Every few seconds, the display glitched, the arrival times jumping forward and backward in a frantic dance. It was a test of patience. Lola tapped her heel against the curb, the rhythm echoing the steady, low hum vibrating through the ground beneath them. Then, the sharp, rhythmic slap of sneakers hitting the pavement broke the silence. Nina rounded the corner, breathless, her pace slowing only as she skidded to a halt beside them. She checked her phone, then the sign, then her friends, a wide grin breaking across her face. The wait was almost over. They turned as one toward the street, chests rising in anticipation, watching the empty lane for the first sign of movement. The city held its breath with them, the air thick with the promise of the ride ahead. The low hum in the ground deepened into a steady resonance. A sleek, metallic shape materialized from the shimmering heat of the road, moving with a strange liquid grace. It did not roar or rattle like the machines they were used to. It simply glided, sliding to a precise stop directly in front of the curb. The air around the vehicle remained still, devoid of exhaust or grit. With a sharp, sudden hiss, the doors folded inward, revealing a cool, illuminated interior. Stella and Tanya moved first, stepping across the threshold with measured curiosity. Lola and Molly followed, their feet hitting the flat, clean floor of the cabin. The interior felt like a different world, quiet and bathed in soft light. They moved down the narrow aisle, searching for space. Lola reached the window seat and claimed it, her fingers tracing the smooth frame. Molly and Nina squeezed in beside her, their backpacks shifting as they settled into the seats. The sensation was surreal. The cabin felt disconnected from the city outside, a silent bubble waiting to be released. They sat upright, gripping the armrests, eyes wide as the doors hissed shut once more, sealing them inside the quiet machine. The bus pulled away from the curb with a subtle, magnetic pull. There was no grinding of gears or shuddering of the floorboards. It simply gathered speed, sliding forward as if propelled by a hidden force. Inside, the silence remained absolute, a sharp contrast to the chaotic energy of the streets they were leaving behind. Lola pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breath creating a small, fading circle of mist. As the vehicle accelerated, the static city transformed. The tall glass towers lining the boulevard began to smear into long vertical streaks of gray and silver. The world outside lost its sharp edges, becoming a fluid, shifting mural of light and shadow. Nina leaned in, her eyes darting across the horizon as buildings flickered past like pages in a book. Every intersection was a flash of movement, a sudden burst of color from a passing storefront or a pedestrian, caught in the blur. The girls did not speak. They were anchored to their seats, watching the rhythm of the city accelerate until it felt like they were drifting through a tunnel of glass. The sheer velocity pushed the reality of the streets away, leaving them suspended in a quiet, moving vantage point high above the pavement. The blur of the city towers began to thin as the bus banked onto the approach of the steel bridge. The rhythmic pulse of the street vanished, replaced by the hollow, echoing sound of wheels rolling over metal grates. The light inside the cabin shifted, turning from the shadowed gray of the city canyons to a bright, expansive white. Lola sat back, her gaze widening as the horizon opened up in every direction. Below them, the river stretched out like a sheet of hammered silver, catching the afternoon sun and tossing it back in blinding, fractured shards. It was a massive, moving mirror that seemed to pull the eyes downward. Nina leaned forward, pressing her palm flat against the cool surface of the window. She watched the water churn against the bridge piers, swirling in deep, dark eddies that contrasted with the brilliant surface shimmer. The sense of confinement they had felt in the city evaporated. Here, the scale was different. The river felt ancient and limitless, cutting through the heart of the concrete world. The girls remained still, watching the water flow beneath their feet. The bus glided forward, a silent needle stitching the two sides of the valley together, while the vast, Glittering current pulled at their attention, demanding they acknowledge the sheer scale of the landscape. The bus dipped off the bridge, and the open expanse of the river vanished behind the rising steel walls of the downtown district. The ride slowed, the hum of the engine dropping to a low, melodic thrum as they navigated the perimeter of the central plaza. Then, the sound arrived. A sharp, brassy note cut through the air, followed by the deep, soulful roll of a saxophone. It was a street performer, positioned near the fountain, playing a rhythm that seemed to command the movement of the crowd. The melody drifted directly through the open window, filling the cabin with a sudden, vibrant energy. Lola felt the vibration before she heard the full phrase. She shifted in her seat, her heels finding the floor, and began to tap a steady rhythm against the rubber matting. The tempo was infectious, syncing with the stop-and-go pace of the bus as it navigated the traffic. Molly and Nina turned toward the source of the music, their heads bobbing in time with the swing of the notes. The city no longer felt like a blur of glass and steel. It had a pulse, a cadence that demanded participation. Lola leaned closer to the window, her foot tapping faster, fully synchronized with the saxophone's climb as the bus swept past the heart of the plaza. The bus slowed, its electric motor winding down to a final, muted click as it pulled to the curb. The pneumatic doors hissed open, releasing the pressurized air from the cabin. Lola, Molly, and Nina stood up, their movements stiff from the long ride. They stepped down onto the sidewalk, and the transition was immediate. The constant, low-frequency hum of the city traffic dropped away. Here, the air felt cooler, carrying the scent of damp soil and crushed clover. Stella handed out juice boxes, the crinkle of the foil wrappers sounding unusually loud in the quiet. They stood by the park gate, watching the bus pull away, its departure silent and without a single plume of exhaust. The stillness of the park was heavy, a complete departure from the rhythmic pulse of the downtown plaza. Nina inhaled deeply, her chest expanding as she took in the scent of the trees. The group didn't move toward the trails yet. They remained at the perimeter, grounded by the sudden change in pace. The ground beneath their feet felt firmer, the grass edges sharp and defined. They took a collective breath, allowing the silence to settle around them, fully absorbing the stillness that the green space offered against the backdrop of the surrounding city. The silence of the park was broken by a soft, rhythmic, mechanical pulse. Down the street, another bus approached, moving with a fluid grace that defied the heavy, lumbering pace of the vehicles they were accustomed to. The group stood motionless, tracking its path along the curb. As it glided past, they leaned forward, eyes scanning the space behind the vehicle. There was no gray cloud, no stinging haze, no lingering smell of burnt fuel. It simply passed, leaving the air exactly as it had found it, clear and crisp. Stella lowered her juice box, her gaze lingering on the empty stretch of road. Lola followed the path of the bus with her eyes until it vanished behind a row of trees, struck by the simplicity of the moment. There was no roar of an engine, no struggle against gravity, just a clean, silent efficiency. Nina pressed her lips together, nodding at the others. In that quiet exchange, the reality of their surroundings shifted. They were not just riding through a city, they were witnessing a transition to a cleaner, lighter way of existing. The realization settled in, anchored by the absence of smoke, transforming their view of the streets ahead. They stood together, watching the horizon, fully aware of the quiet progress that defined their path. The group moved back toward the curb as the bus returned, its doors sliding open with a familiar soft click. They climbed the steps and settled into their seats, the interior air cool and still. As the bus pulled away, the engine hummed a low, steady note that resonated through the floorboards. They turned a sharp, tight corner, the vehicle leaning gently into the curve. Outside, the landscape shifted from the park green to a dense row of houses. Each structure stood out with distinct textures and bright surfaces. They passed community gardens where rows of vegetables pushed through the soil. The bus slowed slightly as it navigated the narrow street, giving them a clear view of the activity within the garden plots. People moved between the rows, tending to the growth. Lola watched the blurred colors of the neighborhood move past the glass. The motion was fluid, a rhythmic dance through the tight urban grid. There was no hesitation in the driver's movements, only a smooth, practiced precision. Nina tapped her fingers against the frame, matching the steady pace of the ride. The air inside felt connected to the life outside, a shared pulse that linked the gardens, the homes, and the quiet, efficient transit that carried them through it all. The hum of the electric engine deepened as the bus slowed, the familiar landmarks of the starting point sliding back into view. The bus pulled precisely to the curb, its motion ceasing with a soft, final release of pressure. The driver reached forward, pressing a button on the console. With a sharp hiss, the doors folded inward, revealing the pavement they had left behind so long ago. Lola stood up first, her boots hitting the concrete sidewalk. She felt the sudden stillness of the street after the constant motion of the ride. She turned back toward the open entrance, catching the gaze of the driver. She raised her hand, fingers spread wide in a deliberate wave. The driver offered a brief, steady nod before the doors hissed shut once more. The bus pulled away from the curb, its form shrinking as it merged into the flow of downtown traffic. It moved with the same fluid ease it had maintained throughout the trip, disappearing around the corner and leaving only a faint vibration in the ground. Lola stood still for a moment, listening to the city sounds returning to the space where the bus had been. The ride was over, the silence of the street filling the gap where the engine had hummed. She felt the weight of the day shift from the travel to the arrival. Nina and Molly stepped onto the sidewalk, joining Lola as the street noise surged back into their awareness. The three of them stood for a moment, the ground beneath their feet feeling solid compared to the gliding motion of the bus. Nina pointed toward the bridge, her finger tracing a line against the horizon where the steel structure met the sky. Molly nodded, following the path with her eyes, and Lola shifted her weight to look back at the route they had just traveled. They began to walk down the street, their footsteps falling into a synchronized rhythm that matched the pace of their earlier journey. Every intersection they passed seemed different now, marked by the memory of what they had seen from the window. They talked in short, overlapping bursts, gesturing toward the community gardens and the distant river. There was no rush in their movement, only a shared understanding of the distance they had covered. They navigated the sidewalk with ease, avoiding the cracks and the crowd, moving as a single, cohesive unit. As they turned the corner, the city lights flickered to life, casting long, soft shadows across their path. They kept walking, shoulders brushing, their faces turned toward the evening horizon. The journey had ended, but the connection remained, etched into the map of the streets they navigated together. They moved forward, leaving the bus stop behind, fully present in the steady, rhythmic flow of the city.